All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Uh, I have returning guest Julia, the host of Cosmic Peach podcast, for part two of Da Vinci. And the first one, we covered Da Vinci and some of his paintings and what have you. And this one, I think we're going to touch a little bit more on Mary Magdalene and see where Julia wants to take this. So I'll turn this over to you, Julia, and let the audience know once again where they can find you and your podcast that you've now started, and where they can find you on social media.
Thank you, Ghost. Yes, so I have Cosmic Peach podcast. It's available on Amazon and Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you listen to your podcasts. And today, so I wanted to kind of set up who Leonardo was before we got down into the really heretical part of his life.
Okay.
Because it's hard for me to tell this part of the story without kind of lining everything up that had happened to Leonardo in his personal life that led him to this point. So on the last episode we ended with the Last Supper painting, and we were kind of talking about there's a figure in the Last Supper painting that is curious,
Mm-hmm.
and it's the figure sitting next to Jesus. And so I had obviously watched the Da Vinci Code, and I think you've watched the Da Vinci Code. Most people have,
Yeah.
but it only scratches the surface of where this whole mythos came to be, that Mary Magdalene is in the Last Supper painting and was married to Jesus. So that's the case that I'm going to make to you today, Ghost. And I hope that by the end of this presentation, I will have you convinced.
I'm sure you will. I
But
know you
this
put
is,
a lot of research into this one.
well, yeah. And I mean, this is not an assault on anyone's faith. Like, I'm not trying to take that away from anyone. If you have faith, that's a gift. And I'm so happy for you to have that. And this is not an assault on your faith. This is just, you know, it's too detailed and too many coincidences to pass up it, and it has too much validity to me to not be a real, you know situation for Jesus. I mean, I don't want to offend anybody, but I think that Jesus was married to Mary Magdalene.
Well, there's a lot of
And so
speculation to that. You know what I mean? And
mhm,
and I think the Catholic religion as a whole has really done everything they can to take either some of the books out of the Bible that would point to that. I do
mhm,
believe Mary actually had her own book as well.
she did. And so let's start with a little bit of history here, where the author Dan Brown, the author of the Da Vinci Code, where he got some of his ideas from.
Okay.
There was a French priest of a mountain village, and it was like a really, really small mountain village, nothing, huge or crazy. And he had apparently found a treasure in 1891. And he was penniless when he made this discovery, and by the time he died in 1917, he had spent enormous sums of money. And break in, Ghost, if you have any questions. His
Okay.
name was Saunier, which is also the name of the grandfather in the Da Vinci Code.
What was the name again?
Saunier.
Saunier. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Mhm.
All right. Saunier.
So this is the actual name of the priest of this mountain village, who had apparently discovered a treasure, quote unquote.
Okay.
So that's where we get the name Saunier as the grandfather in the Da Vinci Code. And he is the priest of Rennes Chateau. And he was sent there as a young man, and he had a lot of ambition. And his first task was renovating the church because it was all dilapidated
Hmm.
and super old. And like I said, it was a really small village. And he was like, okay, well, I'm going to renovate the whole thing and make it nice again. And while he was renovating the church, he removed the altar stone and found that there was a pillar that was hollow. And it was a Visigoth pillar that dated back to the 6th century. And inside this pillar was some parchments, and he took them out, and what was written on them were parts of the New Testament written in Latin, and some letters were slightly raised above the other letters. And that's what makes it interesting is the letters that were slightly raised above the other letters were a hidden message.
Okay. Now this
And
is historical. This isn't just out of the book, right? Or are we?
oh, no. This is where he ripped off the idea for the Da Vinci Code.
Okay. But,
He made it fictitious,
right. Because
but
I
it's
remember
based
seeing
on
that where they,
true.
yeah. Okay.
Mhm. And so the question is, what discovery did he really make by removing the altar stone and finding this information? And I don't know if you ever read the book Holy Blood, Holy Grail.
No, I'm aware of it. God, the author's drawn a blank because I was kind of really into this at one point.
Yeah, so he came out with Holy Blood, Holy Grail way before Da Vinci Code,
Mm-hmm.
based on this factual information that, again, Dan Brown kind of ripped off.
Yes.
And so the author of the book Holy Blood, Holy Grail actually went back and deciphered the message, which later led to him writing the book, because he saw the message that was this priest supposedly found, which was these letters that were raised above the other letters that spelled out a message if you put it together. And so the message read, and it's weird to me, and I don't know how he got to his conclusion based on what the message was, but the message read out, "This treasure belongs to Dagobor, the second king, and to Zion, and he is there dead," which made zero sense to me. He
Yeah.
literally wrote a whole book off of that little tiny excerpt from
Wow.
this hidden message. So obviously he's way smarter than I am, and
Yeah.
he did some digging. And so King Dagobor was the last of the acknowledged Merovingian kings.
Okay.
And so I don't know if you've ever heard Merovingian before.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you're familiar with that.
Yep.
And he was the son of Clovis the First, and Clovis the First had made a pact with the Catholic Church that if Clovis increased his empire of his area of France and dedicated it to Christianity, that the Catholic Church would acknowledge the Merovingians as being inheritors of the throne. And so it's supposed that the Merovingian line is said to be direct bloodline descendants of Jesus Christ.
Yes.
And so
And I
whether
believe
or
that
not, I don't.
isn't that where the kind of the Knights Templar also come into play with the Merovingians and what have you.
To protect them.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And so Saunier did not understand the significance of these parchments at all. Neither did I, because if you read it, you're just like, what the fuck is this? You know?
Yeah.
And so the first thing he did was go straight to the bishop. And the bishop had a long, hard look at him and then sent him straight up to the ecclesiastical authorities in Paris. So obviously, maybe he knew what they were. And then he returned from Paris a very wealthy man.
Makes you wonder.
Yes. He had a tower built on the edge of the mountain where the church was located. And he had a huge house built for him and just his housekeeper. It was 5 or 6 bedrooms for just him and his housekeeper. And remind you, he was penniless when he arrived at the village. Like, totally penniless.
Yeah.
And then he discovers these parchments, goes to the bishop. The bishop's like, you need to go ahead and take these to Paris, let them look at it. And then he comes back exorbitantly wealthy.
So the Vatican must have known what the hell he had.
Right. And so he calls his house La Villa Bethany, and that is important, and we'll talk about that later. But remember that he named his home La Villa Bethany.
Okay.
And he had the whole entire road from the base of the mountain all the way up to the church paved. which is unheard of.
Yeah, back in that day, yeah, very unheard of.
hmm He was an ordinary, humble country priest, but then suddenly it appears he discovered something that made him an extremely wealthy man. And what was his church called?
Mm,
His church is the Church of Mary Magdalene.
no shit.
Yes. So the church is practically falling apart when he arrived, and then he refurbished everything and also bought up a lot of land in the village and lived a very lavish lifestyle and would even entertain guests from all over France in like really high style. So in his lifetime, um it's said that he spent the equivalent of $2 million.
Jeez. Went from
Mm-hmm.
penniless to spending $2 million. Damn. Why can't I
Yes.
have that kind of luck? I'd love to
I
find
know.
some little parchment paper somewhere that has
But
some
it's
obscure saying on it, and next thing you know, you're
obscure as
yeah,
fuck. Like,
yeah,
and I'm sure he didn't even realize what it was when he found it because it
no,
was so vague. Like, okay, well, whatever, who cares? And so that's the mystery. And everyone has their speculations as to what he found that could have led to this. Some people believe that he found a treasure trove in there, and then some people believe that he found the information, like what I said to you on the parchments, and that's what was the treasure.
okay,
And what he found was literally priceless to the church to keep quiet.
yeah, it sounds that way.
He could possibly have been blackmailing the church to keep him quiet about what he discovered. Maybe he did understand what it was and he was blackmailing them. So that's another theory that I found.
Now,
Um
when just a quick question, did
mhm.
he name his church the Church of Mary Magdalene, or was it already named that?
It
As,
was already named the
and
Church of Mary
and that's
Magdalene.
what they appointed him to, was that church.
Mhm.
Hmm, okay.
And let's just say, so the church was already named the Church of Mary Magdalene. And let's just say what he found in there is the proof that Mary Magdalene is the spouse of Jesus
Right. And
and this Merovingian bloodline.
it's crazy because, you know, they took a lot of books out of the Bible. Mary had one herself, we discussed that a little bit. And but in that day, to, have a church named the Church of Mary Magdalene is kind of weird
Mhm.
all in itself, because she's not a very respected character of the Bible.
Well,
I
no,
mean,
it's like they said in the Da Vinci Code, the Catholic Church slandered her and actually made her appear as a prostitute, but we'll
mhm,
get into that. So the bishop at the time was getting concerned because of this huge expenditure of money and these vast wild parties he was throwing. And the bishop was like, where the hell is he getting this money from?
right.
So the bishop came up with a theory and accused the priest of a crime called simony. Or so simony is like selling masses in exchange for forgiveness of sins that you committed, and they suspended him. So without any proof of this at all, they were like, there's no way that he's not up to this shit because he's getting too much money. So he must be. So it'd basically be like you go into confession or something, and he's like, well, for $50, I'll forgive you for your sins or
Right.
whatever. So they accused him of doing that, and he was suspended. And so the priest took this all the way up to the Vatican and was immediately reinstated.
Oh shit.
hmm And so he gets suspended of this crime that they think he's committing, and he's like, no, I'm not. Takes it all the way up to the Vatican. He gets immediately reinstated, but shortly afterwards he dies suddenly.
Ah,
So
died of suicide. Two sword
mm,
whacks to the back of the head.
well, it's even more bizarre than that, Ghost. And it's funny because it reminds me of Stanley Kubrick, because they were like, all right, we'll play, make your movie, let's see what you do.
Mhm.
They see the movie, dead.
Yeah.
They find him dead the next day. And so it's like, okay, yeah, all right, we'll reinstate you.
Mm-hmm.
dead.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay. Um, so he dies of a stroke.
Hmm.
But what is most curious is that 10 days before his quote unquote sudden death of a stroke, his housekeeper had already ordered his coffin.
What?
Yes.
Oh shit.
So that's just a little bit of like there's something more going on here,
Yeah.
obviously.
And it's funny to
Um,
think because people like you and I and others look into this stuff and are fascinated by it and the conspiracy end and the wild tales that involve a lot of these topics that we discuss. Hearing that, it's kind of neat because it was actually going on back then. You know what I mean?
yeah, I
Kind of what we're
know.
doing now, only without the technology to do it. You know what I mean? It's weird. Like, so it's kind
But
of
and
like,
the thing about it is, Ghost, is why I said I'm gonna make this case to you and I'm gonna try to convince you that this is what's going on. Is because I believe this is the biggest cover up in human history. Just like they said in the movie, but I'm not playing. I think this is the biggest cover up in human history. Because if this is true, it changes everything.
mm-hmm.
It changes everything
Oh,
that
totally.
we think is true. So it's inconclusive what was really going on. But it is also known that there were times where the priest was very broke and then suddenly like another load of money would come along. And I believe that the source of his money was that he was being paid by the Vatican. And he would actually say to the bishop out of his own mouth, I was given large donations by people who live outside the village, but I was given these donations under the conditions of strict secrecy that I can't reveal who the donors are. Out of his
Ah,
own mouth, he said that.
well, right there says, oh, this was given to me by the Vatican.
Right. But why did they give him this money? What did he know? And it's again, I'm going back to the fact that he discovered Jesus's direct bloodline.
Right.
So after his death, the priest's housekeeper continued to live in the house until her own death. When the French changed the currency from the old franc to the new franc, she was seen in the garden burning large sums of paper money. Um, Probably because she didn't know what to do with it and she couldn't explain where the money had came from. And she couldn't use it anymore because they went from the old franc to the new franc. So she literally went out into the garden and just started shoving piles of paper money into a garbage can and burning it.
Oh shit.
And so she
Imagine if we had
actually,
that money today. It'd be worth something.
well, shoot, she burnt it all up,
I
which is
know.
also curious. She did actually tell the person who moved into the house that she would explain the secret of their wealth before she died. Um, but so she suffered a stroke as well after she said this.
So strokes were the first suicide,
But it
back in the
didn't
day.
kill her.
Oh,
It
it
didn't
didn't.
kill her.
Oh, okay.
It rendered her unable to speak.
Mm,
And she was never able to say where the money had come from. And then she died, and the secret died with her.
damn.
Yeah. So I think they were trying to kill her though.
Yeah. And
Stroke, but it just she
back in that
lived, but
time,
she then she
al-
didn't talk.
yeah, and alchemy was big back then. So you know what I mean. They were
Mhm.
playing with all sorts of shit, and you know, obviously that's how we got a lot of the stuff that we have today. But yeah, that's crazy that oh well, and we don't really have guns and bullets, so let's just stroke them. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And so many things could be categorized as a stroke. You poison somebody one time and and then
Hmm.
there's like, oh, they had a stroke,
Yep. Yeah.
dead. We don't even know if it was if it was an actual stroke, but so the Priory of Sion, are you
Yes.
familiar?
Hmm.
Okay. As seen in the Da Vinci Code, the secret keepers
Yep.
claim they were the ones who were supplying the priest and that they were behind his cash flow.
Hmm.
So that's interesting.
That is.
So it this is the part where this information is so fucking old It could have been the Vatican or it could have been the Priory of Sion. We weren't there. We have no idea. All we know is that his lifestyle was crazy, and what he discovered made him a wealthy man.
Right.
So they claim that the priest discovered documents that showed the truth about the Merovingian dynasty. And then again, the author of Holy Blood, Holy Grail came up with the hypothesis that these Merovingians, of course, are the direct descendants of Jesus Christ, and he writes the book. So the secret that died with the housekeeper seems to have been something to do with the Catholic Church, and they wanted to keep it under wraps, of course.
Duh.
And some people speculate that what he discovered was an equivalent to a birth or marriage certificate pertaining to Jesus Christ and Mary Magdalene, which is interesting.
Yes, because if this is true, that just proves Jesus was an ordinary man.
Right. It
my
cancels
opinion.
out his divinity.
Yes.
Which again, I'm not trying to offend anyone. This is just
Oh, no.
this just how it is, you know.
Yeah. I say it all the time on my podcast, believe whatever you want to believe. If it makes you a better person at the end of the day, that's fine. I don't care if you believe in Satan. If it makes you a good person, you're not killing people and you're being kind
and you're not, not hurting kids, whatever. So some people believe that he found a genealogy of the bloodline descendants. Or some people believe he found an actual corpse.
Ooh.
So, because it was in a pillar.
Mm-hmm.
It could have been anything. It literally could have been an actual corpse of like a very, very important person, such as like Mary Magdalene's bones or ashes, or like some way of tracing DNA back to Jesus. Like we would have been able to do that now.
Mm-hmm.
Because there was a yellow marker on the outside of the church that would signify that a very, very, very important person was buried there. Okay. And the church is the Church of Mary Magdalene. So you can draw conclusions from that.
Right. And I do remember from back in the day looking into this and watching documentaries and the authors of the Holy Blood and Holy Grail being interviewed. And that was a common practice, is, you buried important people under the altars of these, churches and what have you. So
yeah, that is correct, Ghost.
That's all, it's crazy that you're bringing this up, because it's all just like flooding back in my head. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember, hearing this, because I was never a big reader. I tried reading Dan Brown's book that, he obviously ripped off from Holy Blood, Holy Grail, but I always loved watching documentaries on this type of stuff. I was always fascinated with the Knights Templar, where, the origins of Friday the 13th, which obviously was yesterday, and oddly enough, we're talking about this today. But yeah, it's as Ryan would say, it's fascinating.
It is fascinating. Yes. If you're going to read one, don't read Da Vinci Code. Read Holy Blood, Holy Grail, because he basically ripped it off.
Yes.
From that author. And it's just so interesting, because okay, so back to the story. If the Priory of Sion was responsible for funding the priest, it would also make sense because they were attempting to reinstall the Merovingians to their rightful birthplace on the throne.
Makes sense.
And Sir Isaac Newton was actually alleged to be one of the Grand Masters of the Priory of Sion. But I personally think it was the Catholic Church that was funding him to keep him hushed.
Okay.
And I think they do mention in Da Vinci Code that Isaac Newton was in the Priory of Sion. I don't know if they mentioned that he was one of the Grand Masters of the Priory of Sion. So he could have thought himself a bloodline descendant.
Now, with the Priory of Sion, is that more loosely based on, a theory, either from Dan Brown or from Holy Blood, Holy Grail, or was this an actual documented uh
It's still going on
priory?
today.
Okay, all right, that makes sense.
Still going
Okay.
on today. And actually, the author of Holy Blood, Holy Grail tracked down the Grand Master of the Prior of Sion the current Grand Master of the Prior of Sion, when he was writing his book,
Okay.
and went and talked to him face to face. So he said that he was very secretive, didn't really share a lot, had a great poker face.
Hmm.
But it's something that was going on as recent as like the 80s
Wow.
when he wrote the book.
Okay. So yeah, I
So
don't see
it's
why
an
a secret
actual
society would just disappear. You know what I mean?
right.
They
So it's still, and to this day, I believe they still have the Priory of Sion. So on to what we've all been waiting for is the Da Vinci connection. Um, so now that the listeners know a little bit of the background on Da Vinci from the first episode, we can just dive right in. So, as we talked about previously, Leonardo was a heretic, among other things. He also had a kind of sneering attitude
Mhm.
towards the Roman Catholic Church,
Very.
and he was very critical of the church. And as you remember back to our previous conversation, um, I believe it's because he was allowed down into the library.
Hmm.
That is my personal speculation, is that he became heretical after he saw what all has been hidden from us,
Gotcha. It makes sense.
including including Mary Magdalene. That
Hmm.
would take away Jesus' divinity,
Yeah,
and
that
that would
would.
make Mother Mary,
Uh,
they said she was without sin. My ass.
right.
That would have meant she got pregnant in the normal way that people get pregnant. That
That.
would have meant Jesus was, do you see what I mean?
Yeah,
That
and
would make you heretical.
nobody. And this is the thing that baffles me, and nobody questions why a 12-year-old girl gets pregnant by divine intervention. 12, like that. No, that. And
She was pregnant before she married Joseph.
mm-hmm, yeah. And who marries a kid?
Man, ghost.
That
And child brides were all the rage back in
yeah,
like the Old Testament.
yeah. And
Harems
no,
of child brides,
yeah,
actually.
and nobody has a problem with that. I
No.
don't get it.
So actually, Ghost, you might be interested. I did an episode. I'm going to release it in a week or two with Shayla about
Hmm.
Elvis and Priscilla. She was a child bride.
Yes, yeah.
She was
I actually,
14.
yeah, I had her on. I haven't released it yet, but yeah, that's a future episode of mine as well.
Mm-hmm. So, and I mean, it's just like it's kind of a common thing that shouldn't be a common
No.
thing, but if I have a 14-year-old in my life right now, they're not ready to get married.
Mm-mm.
They still look like a baby to me,
Yeah.
to be honest with you. They are
Yeah.
very, very, angelic right now, but you know. So, getting into another work of art that we didn't cover in the last episode, are you familiar with the Shroud of Turin?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So there was a book written in 1994 which actually makes the argument that the Shroud of Turin is one of the least known Leonardo da Vinci's,
Mm. Yeah, I've heard that, because isn't that the
and
one
that
that?
he actually created it.
Yeah, because a lot of speculation was, oh, that isn't that the image of Jesus supposedly on it, and this and that,
Mhm.
and
It's supposed to be that Jesus's body heated up so hot when he transformed into his astral body that it made a physical impression on the linens.
yeah, um,
That's the story.
I think
So
they
let's
kind of
let's
catch on fire,
proceed.
but that's just me.
So in the 1970s, scientists were allowed to analyze the Turin shroud for a very short period of time, and they actually carbon dated the shroud itself to a period of the 12 to 1300s. So it couldn't possibly have been used to wrap the body of Christ.
No,
I'll just that's that. And again, I love y'all Christians, but this, and I don't want to sound like Fauci, but trust the science.
right.
carbon dating.
Yeah.
You know, you can't argue that, Ghost.
No.
And so Leonardo is actually really unique among artists of his day because he never produced a crucifixion painting.
Hmm. And most other ones
So,
did, didn't they?
yes. And he was the only one who never produced a crucifixion. What he may have been doing by putting this up is actually a kind of crucifixion substitution.
Mm. Okay.
And the analysis that some have put upon the image itself is that it's actually burnt on the top.
Hmm.
And so this can be done by what is known as the camera obscura, and I think a lot of people have made this analogy before, that it's where it actually takes light and it burns it on top of the material.
Yes.
And what is even more outrageous is he actually used his own face as the point of reference.
And
So
I think Da Vinci, the whole time after learning this, to me, what I'm getting is he spent the rest of his life trying to prove the lie that existed out of the Catholic Church.
kind of like a Kubrick.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. And so remembering back to the first episode where I pointed out that he was notorious for painting himself in his artworks, you remember?
Mm-hmm.
He even painted himself into the Last Supper.
Mm-hmm.
This would have appealed to his sense of humor.
Right.
Okay. And as a side note, I saw something on the Vitruvian Man, you
Mhm.
know, okay. And what they have discovered is that every part of the Vitruvian Man corresponds with the inside of the Great Pyramid.
Oh, shit.
And if that's true, there are more chambers yet to be discovered.
Mm. And they won't let anybody go in there and do nothing anymore.
Isn't that so crazy, Ghost?
Mm-hmm. That is crazy.
That's just a
That's
side
awesome,
thought,
though.
but mm-hmm.
That was a good find.
And so the Last Supper painting, we have Jesus with a red, uh, you know, whatever they call him, his dress.
Yeah, like a scarf or garb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then he has the blue cloak.
Yes.
And then the figure on the side of him has the exact opposite clothing. We've already talked about that.
Mm-hmm.
But the figure is leaning away from Jesus. And it's supposed to be young Saint John. Young Saint John.
Yeah.
And the space between the figures, right? They call it the chalice in the Da Vinci Code.
Yes.
That Leonardo is giving us the chalice. But because Dan Brown is a douchebag and he didn't do his own research and he just ripped some shit off, if you actually look at it, he's giving us the letter M.
Mm. Is there any way you can pull up the picture?
Yeah, let me,
because I'd like to have look at that again, because I do remember there was something with that, with it forming the V or a chalice and the leaning away of each other, but
yes. So Ghost, so that's why you should it's like you always say, think for yourself.
mm-hmm.
This is my take. Let's find a good one. So he's giving us the M. Do you see it here? Boop, 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 boop.
Oh, okay, yeah. All right, if you go above her head and then down up Jesus's arm and down again forms the M.
And look where he's pointing. Up.
That guy's pointing up.
But let's just take it literally, like if you're gonna point up and then go down and then go up and then come down.
Yeah.
And now
if you look at that elbow in the blue over here.
This could be the other, and then
and-
he's got his hands up, so it's like
Like
another
saying it,
hand.
yeah, or like saying this is where it stopped. Like go
Yes.
up, down, stop.
Up, down, up, back to the hand.
Hmm.
And to me, this is very. And then we got the knife again.
Yeah.
The knife, and then the guy freaking out. It's just crazy. Whoops. Okay.
There we go.
So this could be Leonardo telling us Mary Magdalene was at the Last Supper sitting next to Jesus in a position of status.
Okay.
Because Jesus is in the center of the table. He is the most divine, right? He's in the middle. And then the person who would be directly next to him would also be a person of status, right? His other half.
Yeah.
Okay. And as we pointed out in the last episode, no chalice on the table. No cup.
No.
People are only able to see what they're told to see, which is why, again, think for yourself. Don't take it at face value. And so I'm going to go back here. I'm going to share again, actually, because I forgot. You're going to love this, Ghost. This is going to rock your world. Are you familiar with the Madonna of the Rocks?
I've heard of it. I'd have to see it again.
Okay, can you see this?
Hang on, let me move our pictures out of the way. Okay, yeah.
Okay. So there are two versions of Madonna of the Rocks. The first one that Leonardo painted was unaccepted by the church because he hadn't painted halos on the figures. And so the Madonna of the Rocks depicts the flight of Jesus and John the Baptist from King Herod during the infanticide.
Okay.
Jesus is with Mary. In the one that they the one that they ended up accepting, Jesus is with Mary and John the Baptist is with the angel Uriel, who is his guardian.
Yo, do you know who Uriel is?
Man, I haven't dove into that. All I know is that's John the Baptist protector.
Ryan actually just did an episode on Uriel, and Uriel, if I'm not mistaken, and I take this right, is the true light bearer or the bringer of wisdom that everybody gets Satan confused with in the Bible.
Oh, so he's the true Lucifer.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting.
Yep.
And to be the guardian of John the Baptist, who would later baptize Jesus. That's interesting.
Very interesting.
So some people say that it was unaccepted by the church because of the juxtaposition of Jesus Christ and John the Baptist.
Okay.
John the Baptist being older than Jesus and John the Baptist was a descendant from the Aaron line, which made him a priest Messiah.
Okay.
Okay. And Jesus Christ was also a descendant from the Aaron line and the Davidic line, which would make him not only a priest Messiah, but also a king Messiah. And the fact that John the Baptist, I'll just say it to you like this. The fact that John the Baptist baptized Jesus as the Son of God, the Roman Catholic Church would prefer us to believe that Jesus was doing all the baptizing, and who the hell is John the Baptist to baptize the Son of God?
Right.
But if you look at the genealogy of the family, it adds up perfectly, which is something that the Catholic Church would have liked to sideline.
Okay.
So if we look at the heretical version, which is right here.
Now, in this picture, which one is Jesus? Is Jesus the one with the two fingers up, or is he the one being held around with
Okay,
the
so
with the
you have
cross?
Mother Mary
Okay.
with her arm around an elevated John the Baptist
Okay.
who is kneeling.
Yes.
And then you have the angel Uriel with a lower positioned Jesus
Yeah, he's
who
looking up.
has his fingers up and he's bestowing the blessing onto John the Baptist.
Okay.
So this scene is not in the Bible, of course. This was invented by the Roman Catholic Church because the embarrassment that John the Baptist would have had the authority to perform the baptism ritual on Jesus. So they concocted this story that when they were babies, baby Jesus bestowed upon him the permission or the blessing to baptize him later in life. I mean, come on.
Mhm. Yeah.
That is such a that is so retarded. And I'm sorry to use that word, but it's retarded. So they're saying that while Jesus and John the Baptist were running from the infanticide of King Herod, they stopped on a side street. They got with the other person's guardian.
Hmm.
Okay. So John the Baptist is with Mother Mary, and Jesus is with the angel Uriel, and he bestowed upon baby John the Baptist, hey, dude, later on in life, I'm giving you permission to baptize me. That's the story they made up.
That's crazy. And who's the person on the donkey?
Who knows?
Like that.
Could have
That's
been
just
Noah for all for
yeah. It's
I
weird.
mean, that's how convoluted the story is. It
Yeah.
just doesn't make no sense at all.
I'm still fascinated by that. That's the depiction of Uriel and Ryan's deep dive that he did on who
Is
Lucifer truly
a
is.
male?
What's that?
Was he saying it was a man?
I do believe Uriel. Well, angels really don't have sex. You know what I mean? Like they're not male or female. But in our terms, I think Uriel was a male. But yeah, it's just weird that you're bringing this up.
Isn't it interesting he painted Uriel as a woman?
Yeah, yeah,
Maybe
that
because women had a more important part in the Bible than we're led on.
that is true.
You know?
Because if you look at the way the Catholic Church has, depicted women and women in the Bible, it's never been in any type of
Oh, it's
power
always
or
been dog
leadership.
shit. It's
Yeah,
always been dog shit. And
always a
so,
submissive, like relationship with a man. You know what I mean? Like it's
oh yeah, we're the secretary to the men.
yeah,
Like we just tag along and we do the equivalent of making coffee for the men.
yeah, yeah. Pretty much. You cook, you clean, you take care of the
Right.
house. You know.
But in my argument, I'm going to try to convince you ghosts that women were actually equal if not higher than the men in the Bible.
Let's do it.
Um which would make sense, right? I mean, okay, but let's get back. I don't want to tangent too much, but so the scene that was commissioned, and I roll
Yeah.
that this ever even happened. I think Leonardo also rolled his eyes at the story, which is why when we look at the heretical version, which is the one that I have pulled up for you here, the babies are with the wrong guardians, and this is going to get a little tricky. But you remember he loved inversion.
Mm-hmm.
So let's put him with the right guardians. This is Jesus. We'll put him up here with Mother Mary, right? And we'll
Mm-hmm.
put baby John the Baptist with Uriel. If we flip it, Jesus is elevated above John the Baptist and he's bestowing the blessing onto John the Baptist, who is kneeling to receive the blessing, right? That's
Right.
how it should have been. But how did he paint it?
Painted it completely backwards.
He painted baby. So let's just pretend that let's not change the characters, right? Let's pretend that this is exactly how he wanted it to look. And let's say that the little boy that's kneeling with the cross is Jesus.
Okay.
And let's say the little boy that is in a lower position with his fingers extended, bestowing the blessing, is John the Baptist because he's with Uriel.
Mm-hmm.
It would appear John the Baptist is blessing Jesus.
Yeah.
And that's so heretical.
Yeah.
That he,
Wow.
even though, so that would make Jesus kneeling to John the Baptist to receive the blessing.
That's crazy.
He was such a badass. I mean, can you imagine presenting that painting to the Catholic Church?
Oh, especially in those days. I mean, well, even today, but man, wow.
And so, let's see this one. This is the original right here. This is the one that was kind of like a somebody copying it. But
Okay.
this is the original right here. So we got Jesus. So that's supposedly John the Baptist, and that's Jesus bestowing the blessing on him. But if you turn it around, actually Jesus is receiving the blessing from John the Baptist, which makes it heretical. And then he eventually added the halos, you see.
Okay. Yeah, I do.
But there's something else.
Can I point out something
besides
real quick?
what?
There's no halo over Uriel.
Which is also very interesting.
Yeah.
In
Which
that the fact that Uriel is a woman.
Yeah, and the fact that that is supposedly from the research that Ryan did is the true Lucifer,
It is
which would
and
mean it's
Lucifer,
not a
what if
divine
Lucifer
individual.
was a woman?
Yeah,
I don't know.
and
Something to
if
think about.
Uriel is the true person of what people call Lucifer or Satan and what have you, that would make sense why there's no halo around
Mm-hmm.
the head, because that means they're not of holy, you know what I mean, or divine.
Yeah, no, that's crazy. I didn't even think of it like that. Dang, Ghost, that's true.
Yeah, and it's funny, and if you take it for how it is, Satan has his arm around little baby Jesus, who is then
Mm-hmm.
giving the blessing to John the Baptist. So is that an unholy blessing? Is that what he could be
Interesting.
depicting?
So that would be like an unholy baptism.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
See, I'm telling you, Ghost, he was way ahead of us on
Yeah.
everything.
And this is just my humble opinion, people. I'm just looking
Oh,
at
me
it and
too. Me too. This is
taking the information that I've recently learned and applying it to what I'm looking at, and it's crazy.
well, I'm about to blow your mind one more time, Ghost. Because there's something else in this painting.
Okay.
Can you please look at the formation of rocks that's coming out of the Virgin Mary's head?
Okay.
What does this look like to you? This is his way of saying she ain't no virgin.
Oh shit! Is that a vagina?
It's a dick.
Oh, yes, it is. Yeah. Okay. Now I see it.
It's a dick coming out of the head of Mother Mary.
Oh wow. Yeah. Okay. Man, he was like doing some Disney shit before Disney was around.
Man. And this is not an assault on anyone's faith, but come
No.
on. He's telling us, look at all the symbolism in this just one painting.
Yeah. And if you kind of look at it and you go with like the Greek river of Styx and what have you, it almost appears like they're underground, like they're
Yes. I was
almost
going to say that too.
not quite necessarily hell, but not of the
Mm-hmm.
above realm. You know what I mean? It's kind of gives me that
Purgatory.
Yeah, it's like gives me that vibe, I guess you could say.
Yes, me too. It's creepy, Ghost.
Damn.
It's creepy. And so, like I said, just take it how you want to. So, the main thesis I want to present to you is that Jesus is married, as depicted in the book Holy Blood, Holy Grail, and his wife is Mary Magdalene.
Mm-hmm.
And there's another book entitled The Woman with the Alabaster Jar. Have you ever read it? Do you know anything about it?
I've heard of it. I'm horrible with reading. Never really
It's a good one,
en-
Ghost. You'd
never
like it.
enjoyed it. I should probably sign up for Audible, and because I
I
can
was
listen to.
thinking about doing that too, because it's kind of like Audible's kind of like listening to a podcast,
Mm-hmm.
except it's a book. And so the woman with the alabaster jar also makes this argument, and it's written by a woman who was a staunch Roman Catholic.
Oh.
And she believes the Holy Grail is the sacred feminine, the lost bride.
Mm.
Because what do they call Jesus? The bridegroom without a bride. Where's the bride?
Yeah.
So those dicks in the Council of Nicaea took out this very important part of our story, of our history, and of women in general, because they were weak and cowardice, and men did not want to acknowledge the power of the feminine because of the fact that if Jesus was married and had a child, it would diminish his divinity. But it actually enhances it to me, because there is a sacred union between men and women.
Yes.
And I think that's shitty as fuck that they would have taken that out. Okay. So there's a passage in Mark of the anointing of Jesus by the woman with the alabaster jar. And now the book of Mark is in the Bible, right?
Yes.
And so it's the anointing of Jesus by the woman with the alabaster jar at the banquet in Bethany. So first of all, the anointing scene takes place in all four gospels, and there are only 4 stories that do. One is the baptism of Jesus. The other is the multiplication of loaves and fishes,
Mm-hmm.
the crucifixion, and the anointing by a woman, which gives you an idea compared to those other stories how important this was.
Okay.
If you're going to put the multiplication of loaves and fishes, the crucifixion of Jesus, and Jesus getting baptized, and the anointing of a woman, that says something right there.
Yeah.
And so when you research anointing, it actually has sexual connotations in the ancient world.
Oh,
and
I did not know that.
Yes, the anointing by a woman was actually a nuptial rite in ancient cultures.
Okay.
So everyone in the New Testament is Jewish until proven otherwise. We can agree.
Mm-hmm.
And Jesus is a rabbi.
Mm-hmm.
It was commonplace for Jewish rabbis to be married. In fact, it was expected. So Jesus would have been required as a member of the Davidic line to marry. And not only was he required to marry, he was expected to sire 2 sons by the time he was 40.
But he died at 33.
Well, I believe he was married and he was doing what he was supposed to do.
Right. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah. And so the Feast of Cana is mentioned in the book of John. And it doesn't describe the actual wedding itself, but it describes the feast. So in nowadays terminology, it would be, it doesn't describe the ceremony, but it describes the reception.
Can I just
And
touch on something real quick that
yeah,
kind of came to mind right after I said he died at 33? Is the story that we're given. If you and he was supposed to have 2 male sons by the time he was 40. That means he died 7 years before that, and 7 is supposed to be the lucky number, or the number associated with
mhm.
Jesus. And
It's the number of completion.
yeah, which is
Isn't
kind of
that
odd.
funny?
Yeah, I don't know why that came to me. I just I don't know, it
Well,
hit me in
you're
the head, and
empathic, Ghost. So it's
I
like,
just felt like I needed to like point that out and
well,
what
yeah,
have you,
that's
but
why
it
I
could
like
mean nothing.
talking with you. I like talking with you because you look into it even like as I'm going along with the information, you're picking up on things, you're tuning into it, and you're actually like engaging in the process, which
Yeah.
is what I love
Well, you get
because it's like,
my gears are spinning, you know what I mean? It's like,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And so it was called the Feast of Cana, and it's basically the wedding reception, right? And it
Mhm.
doesn't describe the ceremony, but it's describing the reception. And what is described is that Jesus' mother, Mary, tells the servants that they should do whatever he tells them. And so when they're told to go get more wine, they must go get more wine, and so on. But the only person at a wedding who would be allowed to do this would be the groom himself
Okay.
back
So,
then.
yeah. So why the change?
Well, basically, what I got from that passage is that it's Jesus' wedding reception, and he's saying, "Bring wine, bring food, let's
Oh,
celebrate.
okay.
I just got married. Like this is a party." And so Mother Mary's there, and let's say she's not this, divine figure that she's made out to be. She's just Jesus's mother. She's like, "Hey, do whatever he says. He just got married. We're
Okay.
celebrating."
No,
So that's kind of like you know, another passage that would lead to him having actually been married.
okay. I was
And
listening to
so,
that, and I heard it kind of backwards in my mind.
oh
So
no, yeah, no,
now I
you're
get where
good.
you're going.
You're
Yeah,
good.
I get where you're coming from.
So Mary Magdalene is depicted as anointing Jesus on two separate occasions with an ointment called spikenard, which was only allowed to be used on those of the Davidic line. And Jesus is, of course, from the Davidic line. So how do we know it was Mary Magdalene? Um, the Gospel of John spells it right out. It says the woman who anointed Jesus and washed his feet with her hair was Mary, the sister of Lazarus. The same Mary that shows up in all the legends off the coast of France, that it was Mary, the sister of Lazarus, who brought the Holy Grail to the shores of France.
Hmm. Which, if I'm not mistaken, they make the argument that the Holy Grail could have been a child.
Yes. And it says Mary Magdalene and her friends brought the blood royal to the shores of France, not in a chalice,
Mm-mm.
but in the veins of a child. The blood royal.
Or if you look at it in a different way, that V or the chalice could represent a womb. So she could have
Right.
been pregnant also.
That's very good too. Which is I think why they went with that is
Hmm.
like being the chalice or
Yeah.
or the vagina, like the which is totally plausible.
Yeah.
But, no one knows what happened to her. I mean, no one knows where this child is. But that's not the point. I think the child is there to prove the union of Jesus and Mary and the sacred union of the masculine and feminine energies. That's what I think the child is there to serve the point that you have masculine and feminine, the unity, and then you give birth and you have a child, and that's how you reproduce. That's
Right.
how we are here today goes. Like that's normal.
It also kind of, you can take it in a creation sense of when God supposedly created Adam and Eve and what have you. And this is just a reinterpretation of Jesus passing on creation and,
Mhm.
and, you know, the birth of a child and creation of a child is a very beautiful thing. You know what I mean? I'm a
Oh,
father, and that is one of the most beautiful moments of my life when I saw my daughter being born. Like I can't compare anything to that. You know what I mean? It's just it's
it's
beautiful.
why we're here.
Hmm. Yeah.
And it's you're the masculine and the mother of your child's the feminine, and you are in a union.
Hmm.
You conceived a child, and now you have a child, and you're raising your child, and it's just it makes no sense to me that Jesus wouldn't have wanted the union of man and wife when he always talks about how important it is to get married.
Right. And it doesn't
What
make
the fuck?
Yeah,
That's
and if this
hypocritical
is
as fuck, though, wouldn't it be?
yeah, and if this is true, it doesn't make, because some people be like, well, wouldn't that kid have, special divine powers? No, it doesn't necessarily make him a demigod.
Mm-mm.
It doesn't necessarily make, in my mind, Jesus a god. You know what I mean? Like,
Right. But the point is, she's never described in the New Testament as a prostitute. Let's just get that out first.
okay,
Because I'm so sick of people saying, like, they've even watched the Da Vinci Code and they know a little bit about it and they still go, yeah, but the Bible says she was a prostitute.
I
And
don't,
I'm like, in fact, she's rarely described at all.
right,
Mary Magdalene, she's rarely described at all. And she's only named a few times. And the big problem going down in history is that there's too many fucking Marys
mm-hmm,
and not enough detail.
yeah,
It's like
exactly,
Mother Mary, Mary Magdalene, Mary of Bethany, Mary of, and it's just a common name. Like the most common name in the world is Muhammad.
mm-hmm,
Can you imagine leaving the last name off and then writing a story with like 6 different dudes named Muhammad?
yeah, it'd
Like
be
what the,
very confusing.
that's exactly what has happened here. Um, so the Mary that we're referring to is the Mary of Bethany. And remember what I said the priest named his home?
Mm-hmm,
La Villa Bethany.
yep,
So it's another connection to our Mary of Bethany, Lazarus' sister.
okay,
So the independent story that appears in Galilee of some prostitute, and we don't even know that the prostitute's name was Mary.
mm-mm,
It just says prostitute.
yeah,
Okay. And so this prostitute also washed Jesus's feet with her hair and her expensive oils. And that anonymous prostitute is identified as Mary Magdalene because they performed the same act on
mm,
Jesus.
okay,
And there is another Mary that Jesus cast 6 demons out of.
yeah,
So they all get lumped in together as this Magdalene figure. And what they have done over time is that they've hodgepodged all these stories together and they've made Mary Magdalene a demon possessed prostitute that Jesus forgave, and that's it.
unreal.
And the Roman Catholic Church at the Second Council eventually actually renounced this false claim after all this time.
Oh wow,
But there's not a lot said about the Magdalene, and that's how she's referred to as is the Magdalene. And so she was a spouse to Jesus. What little we have in all 4 gospels says that she was a woman of wealth that supported Jesus by her means. And it says that she met Jesus at the tomb on Easter morning resurrected and that she stood at the cross. And there are 8 lists where several women are mentioned in the gospels, and on 7 of them Mary Magdalene is mentioned first.
mm. Why would she be mentioned first if she wasn't of importance?
Well, she's the first lady
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
of
that's what I'm saying.
Jesus.
Yeah.
So we can judge her by her actions. What did she do? Well, she showed up at the tomb to mourn her bridegroom and found him resurrected, which in ancient mythology is the role of the bride.
Okay.
It is the role of the bride to anoint, and it is the role of the bride to meet the risen bridegroom at the tomb. And if we look at the Gnostic Gospels, we see that it is mentioned several times that Jesus used to kiss Mary Magdalene on the mouth, literally says.
Yes. You don't do that unless you're in a relationship. Now, back
Especially
in
if you're
those cultures, it was kiss on the cheek, guy or girl. You know what I mean? But a kiss on the
Yes.
mouth represented intimacy or love.
Yeah, and it just goes to show how important it was to Jesus to show that you show affection to your wife.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you're in a union, you're affectionate, you love your wife, you respect her,
Yep.
right? And that is very important because if we've learned anything from the stories of Jesus is he's supposed to be a role model for how we're supposed to conduct ourselves in our own lives, right?
Mm-hmm.
So why wouldn't he have respected his wife and held her in high regard and kissed her often and loved on her, and like that's how it's supposed to be.
Right.
And you get married and you have a baby
Mm-hmm.
like you're supposed to.
Right.
Like it just would make sense to me. In Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, she barely exists. But in these Gnostic gospels, she's the star.
Mm-hmm.
And apart from Jesus, Mary Magdalene is absolutely dead center in these Gnostic gospels. And Jesus actually defers to Mary, and she even gets him to change what he's teaching sometimes.
Oh, wow.
And yes, and she's depicted as being feisty and assertive and not ashamed whatsoever. And from what it looks like, she actually annoyed the other disciples with the power she had over Jesus.
Okay. That makes sense.
Because good pussy will do that to you. But in the Gospels, it literally says Mary Magdalene is Jesus' consort, which again has the sexual connotations.
Mm-hmm.
And it says the intimate companion of Jesus is Mary Magdalene, and he used to kiss her often, and the other disciples were jealous of this. And it is extremely clear why the Roman Catholic Church didn't want these specific gospels in the New Testament. In the Gospel of Thomas, it states the disciples go to Jesus and they say, "Lord, why do you love her more than us? Why are you always kissing on her?" And they were jealous as hell of Mary Magdalene. And Mary Magdalene could potentially be the most important woman in world history.
Oh, totally.
And we know virtually nothing about her. And I believe the church fathers were so afraid of her image in these forbidden gospels that she was powerful,
Mm-hmm.
that Jesus loved her, and that Jesus had an intimate sexual relationship with her. And she had power over him.
Right.
And they knew this, and they didn't want the women in the upcoming churches to get uppity or become anything like her.
Right.
So the whole history and the way that the church has treated its women is actually because their terror of Mary Magdalene.
That makes perfect sense. And the fact that priests aren't allowed to marry, and any of that, it's like they took it to the extreme to do
They were
away with her. Yes.
terrified of Mary Magdalene.
Yes.
And
And
then,
it goes to show, there's that quote, behind a good man is always a strong woman. You know what I mean?
yes,
And you know, a man and a woman's relationship in a marriage, or even if you don't get married and you're just a long-term relationship, whatever, you need that. It's a balance. You
yes.
know what I mean?
Mhm.
I'm not over my wife in any way, and she's not over me in any way, but there's certain characteristics that she um is better at than I am, and vice versa. And that's kind of what I think, you know, the teachings of Jesus might have been representing. Um, because there's the whole theory that maybe he went off and studied Buddhism and Hinduism a little bit, and then came back and was preaching, and all he was preaching was love and be a good person and not
Mhm.
being a douchebag.
And I
And
believe he taught people how to respect their wives, because
yes,
that was a big problem up until Jesus.
yes, it was. And you know, I think they just kind of scrubbed her in a sense, and tried to make him a divine character that you have to believe in, when he was just probably an ordinary, everyday guy,
A
that
shaman.
a shaman, just
Mhm.
preaching the good word that kind of went a little bit against, obviously Judaism at the time, and it challenged thought, and they did not like that.
It was completely different, is why they didn't like that.
Hmm.
And my husband, just to make your point, was doing fine on his own before he met me, right? He had a
Hmm.
little bachelor pad, but he never folded his laundry. He had stacks of dirty clothes all over his freaking house. dishes piled up in the sink. He used like one soap on everything, head, body, like one soap on everything. And just a simple life, you know? But it's like the woman brings he said, "You know, I had a house when I met you, but like when you moved in, you made it a home."
Hmm.
And that's what women do. It's like so beautiful, like the gentle spirit of women. We decorate and we literally make a place a home. We have just that nurturing, caring energy about us.
And I think that comes because who carries the child? Who is the child's first home is a
Mhm.
mother inside the womb.
Yeah. Yeah, we're literally the gateway of life.
Yeah.
Women are portals to the other world.
My house
We
wouldn't look
birth
as
life.
yeah, wouldn't be as clean as it was, or dishes wouldn't be done as often as they are if it wasn't for my wife. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
She does that. She folds the laundry, but she claims she likes to do it. I kind of tend to believe it, or I just don't do it good enough. So she just does
I
it.
like things done to my standard, and
Yeah.
it's like the other day he came home and he was like, "All the guys at work were asking me what laundry detergent you use because my clothes always smell so clean." And I was like, "Tell them they need to get a woman. I ain't giving away my secrets."
Right.
I was like, "I have my own little laundry secrets that I'm not sharing."
Yeah.
But
And
that's what women do,
yeah,
you know?
and my wife and I, we
Beautiful.
we we trade off, she's a fantastic cook. I enjoy cooking more than she does. She gets up a hell of a lot earlier than I do. It works out about the same amount of hours. Now, this time of year, I'll probably be working a little bit more, going into the busy season with building and stuff. But I love coming home and cooking, and we have an agreement. She's like, if you cook, I'll clean up your mess. I'll do the dishes. Now, granted, we have a dishwasher, but and I'm like, great, because I loathe, even if it's loading and unloading a dishwasher, which takes most of the work out of, I still hate it. You know what I mean? Because it was a chore as a kid, and to me, it was like a punishment. Make sure you do all the dishes before you go out and play, and it's like, oh motherfucker.
That's
But
exactly the setup me and my husband has. He cooks, I clean.
yep, that's awesome.
He's a terrific cook, and he's kinda like you, he loves it. Like, he'll
Yeah,
be Gordon Ramsay in there, and I'll
yeah.
have a delicious meal, and then, I'll put the dishes away or whatever, but that's the beautiful balance of
Hmm.
the whole story. Is like you have, and it's not that I'm saying, like, it's anything to do with gay people or anything like that, because
No,
in most gay relationships, you have a more masculine and a more feminine energy in those relationships, so it still balances out in some
right.
way. But let's look at the Last Supper again.
Okay.
Um, and we kind of have already looked at it, but it's like Mary Magdalene is leaning away from Jesus, and then Saint Peter is the one that has his hand slicing across her neck. You remember?
Hmm.
He has like his hand literally like slicing across her neck, which is interesting because in the Lost Gospels, one of the things that comes out very strongly is that Saint Peter hated Mary Magdalene.
Oh,
And Peter actually told her to shut up and that she wasn't anything special, literally.
damn.
And then Levi told Peter, "Hey, if Jesus told us that she's something special and we should listen to her, then we should do that."
Absolutely.
And there's this back and forth. And why would people have made up the rivalry between Peter and Mary Magdalene? Why would people have made that up? Um, or make a saint, quote unquote, a saint Peter character jealous.
Hmm.
That wouldn't make sense if you're
No,
gonna make a saint character this jealous asshole.
because if you're a saint, you're supposed to be free of all sin. Am I correct?
Correct. Yeah,
And
that's why it's like Mother Mary is like a sainted. She was without sin, they say.
right.
You never commit. So why would they make him a jealous asshole? It wouldn't. So it just makes sense to me that this would have really been like a rivalry between the two.
Makes sense.
And women are still like that. I mean, over their husbands, because it's like my husband, for example, his friends will be like, you're with Julia like all the time. Like, ask her if you can come out and play. Like, like, you know what I mean? And
Right.
I'm like, no, you said you were going to go with me to the grocery store. You know what I mean? Like, and they're like, come on, let Zachary come out and play. But it's like women are that in the relationship.
Hmm.
They're like, no, I said you were going to go with me to the store. So you're going to go with me. I can't go, guys. I told my wife I'd go with her to the store. That's just who women are.
Right.
And so that's who Mary Magdalene was to Jesus. She was like, no, Jesus, you remember you said you was gonna like up your teachings and you were gonna start doing a little. Oh, you're right, Mary. And Peter's like, bitch, who are you to tell Jesus how he's supposed to be teaching?
Hmm.
He hated her
Yeah. That's
because
crazy.
she was like, it's just I can see it in my head exactly how it was, you know. And I think Jesus left his ministry to Mary.
Hmm. That would make sense.
And it's the full completion that he would have left his ministry to Mary. And you got to think of the kind of person that Jesus was. Wouldn't it make sense that he would have leveled the playing field for women
Hmm.
and given women a place in the church as equals? Like that's so Jesus.
Yeah, that's totally. I mean, if you follow anything that he has taught and what we're given of his teachings, that is 100% him.
That's who he was. In one of the forbidden gospels, Peter actually says to Jesus, "Let Mary leave us, for women are not worthy of life."
Wow.
And later, yes. And in a later text, it was actually Mary coming to Jesus saying, Peter has threatened my life, for he hates me and all the race of women,
Damn.
which is precisely how the Roman Catholic Church feels about women.
Yeah, exactly how they feel.
And they've sainted Peter,
Hmm.
even though he was a dick.
Yeah. Wow.
And there is nothing in the New Testament that says priests should be men. And I believe, like I said, he intended his ministry to go to Mary.
Hmm.
Um, and it was the pagan sun worshiper Constantine who ultimately made the final edits to the Bible at the Council of Nicaea.
Hmm.
So that's again why what we left a pagan fuck in charge of the whole history of the rest of the world. You know what I mean? Like the rest of our history.
And I think there might be a little, uh, I don't know, in that story of how he picked and chose or whatever. I think it might be a little misconstrued because in pagan belief, um, pagans felt the same way about their women. Women were supposed to be strong. They're almost just like what Jesus was preaching. And for him to come out and, you know, I think he was just the scapegoat later on down the road
He may
for
have
the
been.
for the Catholic Church saying, no, this is what Constantine did. You know what I mean?
He
Yeah,
may have been.
he did
I
that.
believe that because they had goddesses.
Hmm. Yeah.
So I'm with you, Ghost, a little bit. Yeah, I think you may be right on that. Um, the gospels that were taken out referring to Mary Magdalene were hidden.
Mm.
They literally hid them. And so the reason I wrote that down is because that would actually make these hidden forbidden gospels a lot more pure in comparisons to the ones that were left in that have been translated over 1,000 times.
Mm. Yeah.
So let's say you have the Bible, right? And you take out all the Mary Magdalene bits and you hide them away and they're untouched forever. And then you retranslate what you have left over 1,000 times to the point where what we have, we don't even know if that's really what it said.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
then we go back and we find these hidden gospels that are all about Mary Magdalene. They've never even been translated before. And you read them and you're like, what the fuck?
Hmm.
What's this?
Yeah. And
They're totally pure.
yeah. And being translated so many times. I mean, that's kind of how Ryan stumbled across the Uriel connection with Satan and the Morning Star and Lucifer not being the accurate story.
Mm-hmm.
Mistranslation and all sorts of stuff. And I had actually I'm going to talk to him later on tonight. but I would like him to come on, and maybe even with Colorado Dank, and heck, even maybe you with some of this Da Vinci stuff, and do like a little round table episode on Da Vinci and Uriel and who Satan might have been, really.
I
And
think that would be awesome.
yeah.
Yeah. Because I really feel like that's going somewhere.
Hmm.
Like, it makes a ton of sense to me.
Yeah.
Um, so we're almost done, but there were two parts of Mark that they went in and took out as well with these Magdalene friendly gospels. The first part being Lazarus crying out from the tomb when he was supposed to be dead.
Oh.
And what the passage actually read was a parable about Lazarus, and it was and what they were referring to is that Lazarus was excommunicated from the church.
Hmm.
And the rules were, if you were not delivered within a period of 4 days after excommunication, your soul would be damned to hell forevermore.
Wow.
And on the third day, Jesus heard about this and went to release Lazarus from this banishment of his soul, and therefore restored him to everlasting life. The way that the story is depicted in the Bible is that Jesus literally, physically restored him to life, when in fact, it has been edited and mistranslated, and it was only referencing Lazarus' soul, not his
Hmm.
physical body.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Which would make Jesus what? Not divine.
No, not divine at all.
Which is why they take it out with the Magdalene friendly gospels.
Hmm.
And then the other part of Mark that was edited out is when Jesus goes to visit the house of Mary and Martha. And Mary is depicted as being hesitant in leaving the house. But what in fact happened in the original book of Mark is that Mary actually stepped out of the house when Jesus arrived, and the disciples told her to go back in the house, because they take this out because women were only allowed to leave the house with their husband's permission.
Hmm.
So this in fact would be another indication that Mary Magdalene would have been married to Jesus Christ, because they took the part out where as soon as Jesus arrived, she exited the house and ran to him. And she would only be able to do that if Jesus gave her permission as her husband to leave the house.
Interesting. Wow.
And they took that out. Okay. So I was shocked when I realized actually that Jesus was only one of many dying and rising gods over thousands of years. In the Mediterranean area, there was Dionysus, Tammuz, Adonis, and Osiris, who they all resemble Jesus.
Hmm.
Or it would really be the other way around, that Jesus resembles them.
Yes.
So Osiris was the consort of the beautiful mother goddess Isis,
Hmm.
who was the goddess of magic and sexual magic. And in this culture, women were enlightened, and just for the mere fact that they were women,
Right.
they were more enlightened than everyone else. And the only way for men to become enlightened would be for them to have sex with a priestess of the goddess Isis. That's the only way that they could become enlightened, is if they had the sexual ritual of intercourse with a priestess of goddess Isis.
Gotcha.
Which is the exact opposite of what it is now. It's like men are enlightened, women are idiots. But really, up until the Roman Catholic Church, women were enlightened, and you had to go to the woman to become enlightened.
Yeah.
Which also like makes me think if the Eve thing ever really happened, or they're misconstruing it as like Adam's an idiot and Eve wants to become enlightened. And so she eats the apple because it's her place as a woman to be the enlightened one. And
That's
they
a good
make her
take.
to be a big ass bitch for doing it. But I think it's the place of the woman to be the enlightened one, and then the men follow the women because they are more enlightened. That's how it always was.
Right.
It's just a total opposite of Christianity. And in all these myths, Jesus is the only one who doesn't have a consort.
Mm-hmm.
If he's modeled after all of these other dying and rising gods who had consorts, why is Jesus the only one without a consort? If it's just an archetype,
Right.
it wouldn't make sense. It wouldn't
No.
fit this story. And I'm not buying it. So the only one who doesn't have a magical balancing feminine presence is Jesus. But then you look in the forbidden gospels and there she is.
Yeah.
And also very interestingly, someone bumps into Mary Magdalene in the garden and they say, "Why are you weeping?" And she says, "They've taken my Lord and I don't know where they've put him." And this is actually the Osirian mystery plays.
Okay.
Every year, the worshippers of Osiris and Isis reenact the scene in which Osiris has been torn to pieces
Mm-hmm.
by the wicked god Set, and his bits and pieces have been scattered about everywhere, and Isis goes weeping throughout the land, trying to find them and then magically reassemble them. And the priests ask her, "Woman, what ails you? Why are you weeping?" And she says, "They've taken my Lord, and I don't know where they've put him."
Mm-hmm.
It's literally the
Same
same.
thing.
It's literally just another dying and rising god myth.
And that's the kind of the topic I was touching on in the beginning of the episode of, they it was all taken from different previous religions. You know what I mean? There's nothing new other than the change of a name or the people and culture of where it took place. You know what I mean? Because what you're describing, that was Egyptian. You know what I mean? And
Yes.
they took shit from the paganism or pagans and heathens and what have you, and whatever else. And it's like they didn't create anything new. They just recycled it and either put in something that they thought was good and took out something that they thought was bad.
Well, they've convoluted it.
Yeah.
And then it's like, so then Jesus picked a team, which is America. And then it's like all the other countries have their gods and their culture, which are really more pure than Christianity because it hasn't been as altered and fucked as Christianity has
Right.
been.
That
And
we
so
know
to
of.
me, it's right. Well, and it's just like the Osirian mystery plays.
Mhm.
And they're saying Mary Magdalene and Isis are saying the exact same phrase, right? And it's like you said, they're just recycling this babble of this is the archetype of our gods.
Right.
This is the archetype of the gods, and this is what it's supposed to look like.
And
But if that's true, then it would be a power couple at the top, and then the priest and priestess, and then all the followers, right?
Yeah.
So it just, anyways, what were you gonna say?
I was just going to say it's kind of like how why are Christmas trees
Man,
associated with the birth of Jesus Christ, and there's no pine trees in the Middle East, but there were pine trees in the pagan belief where that derived from. You know what I mean?
well,
And goes
did
back
you
to
listen to the episode I did with Davey on that?
not yet.
So I'll just tell you a little bit. It's all pagan worship, even the wreaths on the door, the eggs for Easter, it's the fertility, it's all paganism. And I don't know if you remember, but I said on your birthday, Ghost, if I came to your house for your birthday party and I bought gifts for all of the guests except for you, how would you feel? And that's what we do on Jesus's birthday is we buy each other gifts, which makes no fucking sense at all.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, Jesus got gifts. It was his birthday. That's why he got gifts. And even if you look at it, they were like essentials for him. Oils and silks for, and it's not an Xbox,
No.
a TV. These pointless materialistic gifts that we give each other, but it's such a slap in the face, right? because you wouldn't go to somebody's birthday party and buy gifts for everybody else and not that person.
No. And another slap in the
So
face
it's
is
just
wearing a crucifix around your neck, or having a crucifix with him depicted on it. If he
do
truly
you
died on the
know
cross like that, I mean, how much of a slap in the face is that?
but do you know how many people were crucified?
Yeah. That
Wasn't
was
just Jesus.
no.
And
That,
Jesus was on the cross next to two thieves
yeah,
who were being crucified as well. So when
exactly.
you wear that symbol, what are you saying?
Not
It's a
very good
death
thing.
cult. It's a
Yeah,
death symbol.
exactly.
And you should, and the Bible says literally, do not worship graven images.
No, but they do. They do.
So I've always said, if you're a Christian and you want to represent Jesus, you should have a stone. The stone that was rolled away. Many people were crucified, but if you are a Christian and that is your faith, only one was resurrected.
Right.
So why would you not symbolize the resurrection? Why are you
Instead.
symbolizing the death? And it's just to show you, you walk around with the cross on your neck and it's like Jesus is dead. That's
Hmm.
what you say.
Yep. Oh yeah.
And so to put a ribbon on it, Ghost, and this is the last little bit here. I think the real religion that Jesus and Mary Magdalene were a part of was a very ancient offshoot of Judaism, which is goddess worshiping.
Hmm.
And there is only one model of life on this planet that works and that makes sense, and that is unionism. What we have shoved down our throats is a celibate God and a virgin mother together in the bridal chamber. And it's no wonder we have a dysfunctional family. The end.
Exactly.
that's
Very
my
well.
last that's my last statement.
That's very true. Um, you nailed that on the head. That was a great way to end it. You know what I mean? Um, wow.
So
Yeah.
Ghost, have I made my case?
I I haven't disagreed at all. You know what I mean? Everything that you were saying, I already kind of either already believed in or had some knowledge of. You went down a lot deeper than I have in the past, and I think you did a great job. You know what I mean? And
Thank you.
I can't, when you take out the lost books or the forbidden books and what have you, and you really do start digging into who Mary Magdalene was, the evidence is right in your face. And why anybody other than for the fact of control would take that out is beyond me. You know what I mean? It's just another form of we have to
And
control you.
we always say they have to show you what they're doing in order for us to know it and then let them do it, right? We
Hmm.
have to give them permission in a sense.
Yep.
So the fact that they've made Jesus's mother Mary a divine figure, to me says a lot, because we say Mother Mary, but are we saying Mother Mary or are we referencing Magdalene?
Yeah, true. Because she could have been a mother as well.
Well, she was in my mind.
Yeah.
She definitely she was pregnant when Jesus was crucified. So she is the Holy Mother. If you're
Yeah.
going to look at it as Jesus' a spouse
Yeah.
who gave birth to Jesus's child, the royal blood, then Mary Magdalene is the Holy Mother.
Yeah. I
So
don't know.
it's just interesting.
And yeah, I always had a hard time buying the 12-year-old Mary being divinely uh impregnated by God. You know what I mean? That's just saying God's into the God that you believe in is into pedophilia. And I've always had a hard time with that story. You
Well,
know what I
you
mean?
remember,
I do believe that there could have been a guy by Yeshua, that walked and did these teachings and practices, but was not a God or God's actual son. You know what I mean? He was just
mhm.
spreading the word to be a better person. Don't be an
Well,
asshole.
you have to make the fine line between the Christ and the man who walked on the sands of Palestine.
Right.
They're different.
Hmm.
Christ, the faith figure of Christ is divine, and then you have Yeshua who walked on the sands of Palestine, who was probably married, lived as other men lived, and was born as other men are born.
Right. And how you
And
get
so
Yeshua into the name Jesus and then Christ is beyond me.
the Christos,
Yeah.
it's like a title,
Yeah.
but it's just, it doesn't, it's so convoluted, Ghost. And if you remember back to the first episode, that one of the first paintings I showed you was the first painting that Leonardo finished for his whatever, he was an apprentice of Andrea Verrocchio or
Yeah.
something like that. And his angel disappears from the photo, or from the
Mhm.
painting, when
Yeah.
it's the angel who comes to tell Mary Magdalene, or Mother Mary, she's going to be pregnated by the living God or whatever. And then all that stays in the painting, but the angel that Leonardo painted disappears when you expose it to like certain type of x-rays.
Yeah.
So it's like, again, he's telling us she wasn't no virgin. There
Right.
wasn't nothing divine about it. Like, it's just, Leonardo intrigues me.
Yeah.
Like, he rocks my world. And I'm not, saying that he was just a great dude. He could have been into pedophilia or whatever. Maybe he was in with these elites, but it's interesting.
Yeah. It's very interesting. And I commend you. You did a great job. You
Thank
do a
you.
hell of a lot better than I could researching and taking notes. So that's why
Thanks.
I that's why I like having guests on. So, but
Mhm.
yeah, it was very informative. I really enjoyed this. And like I said, I'd like to maybe sit down, me, you, and Ryan, or even with Colorado, the four of us, to see if we can get something planned down the road, and kind of go over who Lucifer was versus who Jesus, and with bring in the Da Vinci, and you know uh,
The Magdalene and
Magdalene,
everything.
and because Colorado Dank, he's very devout in what he believes. However, when Ryan was pointing out this Uriel to him, he's like, look, just look into it. And he came back, he's like, dude, I think you're right. You know what I mean? Like, and Ryan was just like, wow, I actually got him to admit to,
Admit.
yeah, that I'm onto something that isn't exactly in the Bible the correct way. So, but yeah.
And all you have to do is read Holy Blood, Holy Grail, or this book, Alabaster, the woman with the alabaster jar, and they lay it out in buffet style of, look at this, look at this, look at this, look at this. So it's not just me sitting here with shit I made up.
Right.
It's historical.
Absolutely.
And it all goes back to the priest.
Hmm. Well, is there anything you want to plug or finalize before we wrap this up?
You can find me on Instagram at cosmic.peach.podcast. And again, on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Google, wherever you listen to your podcasts. And what I do is essentially conspiracy theories, and I do a little bit of paranormal, and I have people come on and just talk about their ghost stories. And I also do healthy living and natural health care. So there's really a little bit of everything for everybody. And I'm just getting started, but I have a whole lot to offer.
Yes, you do. And I'm thankful that you left a review. I saw it, and then you reached out, and then I put the connection together, and then here we are. You've been
It's
on.
amazing.
Yeah, this is your third appearance now on my show, second as a podcaster, because I think
Yep.
when you did the Da Vinci, you were just starting,
I had
uh,
just
just
started. Yeah.
started. So that's great. And you come to the tavern, you bring the feisty female side to the tavern, which is needed, because man, it can get to be a big sausage fest in there sometimes, and
Yeah.
you need the
Yeah. I
woman
mean,
humor in there as well. So
it's fun too. It's really fun we're all inclusive here in the truth community.
oh hell yeah. And you know, like I said, before, you need any questions, I'll be glad to help you, or point you in a direction that can hopefully get you help if I don't know the answer,
Yeah.
because
No,
I
yeah,
sure as
you've
hell
been so
don't know
helpful.
everything. But
Yeah.
you just keep grinding and keep killing it, and I think you'll do good.
Mhm. Thank you so much, Ghost.
You're welcome. And to everybody else out there, think for yourself.